look more serious.
Merry Christmas. How are you doing? GNA here, Udav Semanik. So basically, what we have here, because I'm at Florida, my mother's GNA book, which was the original Amazon book, which was only 48 pages. It looks like about 48 pages. This is when GNA first came out. And 2016 doesn't have much wording on it, surprisingly, even dates or anything. But this was sold through Amazon and all that. And yeah, well, it says October 6, 2016. Sorry, it does. Okay, so this is what it says: Geo-Negative axis, the summation of creation on Earth, part 1 of 3. So part 2 came out. 3 is going to come out eventually. But here it goes. So I'm going to read a page from it, page 37, I just kind of found. So it's called Empty and Self-Centering is Negative Basing. We can also see this in the structures of human emotion or sentimental value. Things that are too narrow or too broad tend to be dismissed easier as negligent or inauspicious. No one really says, hey, let's take the small car since we have so many people. Simply because one hates to drive the car that reminds them of a divorced spouse. The law of the universe does apply to a value of space and time differentiation. We're likened to accept the fine tune for our discourse on subject matters most of the time. And in that we find something definitive in its terms, rather than out of whack or oversized and undersized. Seemingly, so what exceeds the perfect fixture is that which the mind does find extraordinary. That if a person with so little does so much, you'll be able to find some extra appeal or see as more enticing. So that's the GNA I was talking about before, how in this realm, like the way the negative axis is already set up is that, so if you're putting the less, let's say if you're the least and you do the most, then always things are better, right? Then things become amazing. That's like when you have an award, is usually when you did something that was, you had the let's say it wasn't in your favor, the odds were against you, but then you broke through. As the least, you became the most. That's when you just see an extra award come out, right? Like an achievement award. See, there's also gold plus first, the expected winners, right? And silver, the expected winners, like that. But then there's also the overachiever. Who did the overachieving? Who extended their boundaries? Also awards like that. So the nature is kind of like that, and that's already tuned into us. So this is what was being discussed here, is how things are already tuned into the world. So we can't just say that they're making themselves up and they're not based on anything. They're just relative. So that's the idea. Seemingly, so what exceeds the perfect fixture is that which the mind is extraordinary, that if a person with so little does so much will be able to find extra appeal and seem more enticing. Also, if one has a sacrifice in their action, which is in itself a negative-based function, that will automatically stand out as appealing to the neutral spectrum. So if you're just looking out on things and somebody does something that's sacrificial, that they did out of something irregular, that's not common, let's say. It could be charity, it could be good works, right? It could be, anything. We see what catches attention, right? So things catch attention in this world, not because people just made it up, but they actually are enticing. They give us a relative principle, something that is a principle. Now it has a relative principle, and then there's an absolute principle. Without the absolute principle, nothing is relative. So it has to be tied to something absolute. Also, one has a sacrifice in their action, right? There are spectrums in the world, but also be something that makes a thing stand out. Whether it is deemed a bad or good has to come from a negative-based function. Therefore, all existence is dependent on negativity more than relativity. Positive is the release of energy from the base. Therefore, it can ever be one sacrifice as much as it seems to be positive. It can never be one sacrifice. It can't ever be one sacrifice. You have to create a platform for something in order for it to be a sacrifice. I can't do something for me to take something and call it a sacrifice without having my terminology examined. We see in our daily function, if a loved one or someone we know goes out of their way and makes something for us, we will be enamored. More so. The less the person knows us, the more amazing it will be. Whereas if we have a wealthy spouse, or for instance, and then they buy us fake jewelry and bad food from a welfare source or something, we become upset and find them contempt. So the rules apply in the other way looking down as well. The reversal negative exists in a way to thwart energy accordingly as well. The mind becomes empty from hunger and food from its intensity to desire. It becomes a vacuum and outwardly reacts. Signals from the body, that is conscious structure, is also opposite how we perceive it. We think the body is hungry, but the mind is filling the hunger, and the body is empty and need to fuel to go on and is conscious of it. The body is portraying consciousness, and this is not something we are discussing as scientists fully, and it is because it is minute in potency, but nonetheless the functions are going on in a uniform conduction. The body isn't as conscious as the eyes and ears, the main knowledge attaining senses or faculties. So the minuteness of our mind tricked and making us feel that the stomach is the reason we are hungry, when it is conscious that is aware of the stomach's ability to be filled, and that appetite comes back. This we know because there is a way to stop hunger or ruin appetite, even if one's super hungry. So we know this consciousness. Therefore, a powered substance of a substrate, which ultimately is light as well. So consciousness is in everything. Light is in everything. This is what this is describing. That even within our hunger frame, right, within our body, there's hunger, and when that arises, it's really consciousness. It's really our mind. It's not exactly our stomach, because many people can subdue it. They can respond to the stomach and say, "I'm not feeding you," and conquer hunger. It's done all the time. Right? There's so many types of cultures that fast. Some people are really extensive fasters. They fast, completely, even from water. I know this in Hinduism. I've done it myself a few times. So that's what this is being discussed. Also the positive, right? So if we're always looking for a positive regard, right, for ourselves or to experience, then we can't say it's a sacrifice as much as we like to. So people get mixed up with that, and they think that if they please themselves, everything is taken care of. It's communism, right? So you have to be careful with that, because it doesn't always apply to the spectrum of the world, to science actually. It's not, because consciousness. So everything is working already. We don't have to come together and say we are going to make it work by our commune and we're going to rule it, because everything's already working, and we just have to put things in order and understand them. Just like I was saying, like, so if a wealthy spouse came and gave you, the worst gifts this holiday, you'd probably be kind of upset, right? You'd be like, what's going on here? What are you trying to say? Right? You don't usually do that. So, that's the same idea. This is all based on relative and conscious principles, right? So the relativity aspect is that a person, but that is based on an absolute principle that you both are basing things on, which is your demise of what you like about them or your experience about them, right? That's all based on something. So in order for it to be relative, otherwise it wouldn't be relative, it would fall apart. There would be no relative thing. You would say, I am you, you are different. We have nothing in relativity. We have nothing in common. But there's an absolute principle that makes relativity, that makes air, that makes commonality, a common principle. So without the base of relativity, you cannot have common principle. And that's what this is arguing. So relativity, we have to check, right? Because it says we need to take in that fact that it actually operating upon reaching the body, and we are feeling with our mind. The separation is made by accessibility, by the existence of it, which is based on the Geo-Negative axis interlock. That what we think about has to first have space in order to properly be able to be thought out well. If we have other thoughts going at the same time, we will surely have problems in all these realms possible. The stomach and tongue are also running on a negative function, how the body needs to restore appetite through space that becomes from the digesting and passing of food. The breaking down of food content makes the appetite reflect and come back in that system. The brain again is experiencing appetite. If it were dependent on relative magnetic force, the field, it would be contingent on the appliance of the articles it's given, meaning the more it gets of a particular substance and the more you interact with it, the more your taste it will increase. So basically what I proved here is that with diets, if you understand it, I already proved GNA, because it basically says that with diet you can see that if it was just relative, your relative experience would make you eat more. But no, what happens is you eat and then you become satisfied. And by that relative experience, by that finishing experience, you have a geo-negative access experience, which undercuts it and says you're full. Your body doesn't need more food. Therefore, appetite goes away. Consciousness subsides. It changes. Light changes. Right? And when we look at synapses, what are they? Lights. They're lights that can be detected in your brain. Okay? So, I don't know what I'm saying? I didn't need to do a project or experiment, because I proved it with the human body, the way it functions. And anybody can attest to it. So, 2016 GNA was already proved. Nobody had to make a 2017 experiment like they did and try to take the credit for my understanding of light having other sources and other mechanisms. Alright, so now we're going to go to the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, okay? And we're going to understand the goodness of Krishna. Today's his birthday. His son, Jesus Christ, right? So we're going to go with that, and here we go. So it says, oh no, it's in Spanish. Alright, hold on one second. Oh shit. Oh, look at that. We're going to have to do Srimad Bhagavatam. We got to do Srimad Bhagavatam now. So this is the second this is the 10th canto, part 2. Krishna shows universal form. So it says, Tatastu Bhagavan Krishno Vayasyer Vraja Balakai Saharamo Vrajastrinam Chikride Janayam Mudam. Thereafter Lord Krishna along with Balaram began to play with the other children of the coward men, thus awakened the transcendental bliss of the coward woman. So the woman, this is how Vedic society was. A Vraj, right? So Vraj, Krishna was there. And then Krishna and Balaram, they began to play with the other children and the other cowherd men. The boys and the men, they started to play. And the women saw them together. And they were so delightful to see Krishna playing with everybody and interacting. And their hearts became full of joy to see the Lord and his brother interacting with their sons and their husbands. And they became joyous. So that's what it's understanding, right? So that's Vraj. Now in this world we see a lot of contempt, right? People get jealous, angry. So we have to avoid these things. These are sins. These are actually sins. Like we feel in our heart, oh, I wanted something so bad. The desire is the gateway to doing that. By lust. Then you become angry, then you become resentful. Or resentful than angry. So either way. But there's a way to stop that. And that's by focusing on Krishna. See, they weren't regular beings. They were super, let's say, elevated yogis and demigods. They were gods that took birth just to assist the Lord in his pastimes. They were told to by the respective god, the respective gods, the senior gods. They told them, like, go down. People could take birth right now. They have mantra. They could take birth. These gods. They could take birth anywhere. And they said, go take birth in this town because Krishna's going to be there. So their time is a little bit different. Like when their time goes by, a bunch of our time goes by. So they might have told them that, and then like it might have been a long time ago, But then they went in. So they went in. Could have been years before that. So when they came in, they were some were older, some were younger, like that. And then the word Saharama, meaning along with Lord Balaram, is significant in this verse. In such transcendental pastimes, Krishna is the chief hero, and Balaram provides additional help. Krishnasya gopyo ruchiram viksha kamara chapalam shrinvantya kilatan matur iti hochu samagataha. Observing the very attractive childish restlessness of Krishna, all the gopis in the neighborhood, to hear about Krishna's activities again and again, would approach Mother Yasoda and speak to her as follows. Our dear friend, your son sometimes comes to our house before milking the milking of cows, and releases the calves. And when the master of the house becomes angry, your son merely smiles. Sometimes he devises some process by which he steals palatable curd, butter, and milk, which he then eats and drinks. When the monkeys assemble, he divides it with them. And when the monkeys have their bellies so full that they won't even take more, he breaks the pots. Sometimes he gets no opportunity to steal butter or milk from a house. He will be angry at the householders, and for his revenge he will agitate the small children by pinching them. Then when the children begin crying, Krishna will go away. So Krishna comes down. He's a little kid, and he knows he can kind of try these transcendental, so he knows a lot of them are his devotees. So he wants to take service from them. He wants to agitate them. He wants to interact with them. So he's making this pastime. So they think about him. They're amazed. They're like, wow, this darling personality is in my courtyard taking yogurt. Like they stand there. But then they did it so much that eventually Krishna, his mother came in and was like, oh, what are you doing? Well, you can't be doing that. She tried to discipline him, and that's a whole story in itself. But just this appearance, Gopyo Ruchiram, very attractive. All the gopis, they were observing restlessness, child pastimes, how he was restless at Chapalam, going here and there, non-stop, just having fun, Krishna. So it shows how the Lord he's getting involved with his devotees. He's coming here and he's interacting, because otherwise, what would you have something to base it on? What would you say? Like in the Bible it says, love thy God with all thy heart and soul. What do you have to do that? You need something. You need to understand who he is. So the Vedic scriptures are there. They're not making that up. When Jesus said go to the east, he meant find the Vedic scriptures, because he speaks out of them. The Essene Gospel is but a commentary on Vedic scriptures, which is vegetarianism and the goodness of life, which is Vedic. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. These are scriptures of Bhagavad, which is God himself, Bhagavan, the all opulent one. Okay, so I hope that was good for you to understand, and helps you in your life. That basically, to run after things and desire things, you have to be ready that if you don't get them, you're going to curl inside of you. So you have to be able to be yogi and be shanti, peaceful, and not be so absorbed in those things, understanding that most of these things on earth you already had in previous lives. They know we've been around forever. The soul is immutable, eternal. The spirit soul that is consciousness, that pervades us and gives us energy to talk to each other, like I'm doing here. So all these things are understood already. Now, if you want to permeate consciousness yourself, if you want to, do good things and expand and give everybody a chance to understand things, that is also there. So there's many things you can do with this world, this life. You don't have to only worship the body. That's a folk tale. Everyone's telling you the only happiness you're going to have is with your soulmate, and he or she has to be your twin flame and your celebratory duo, or your So eventually you're just like, what? I think happiness is within inside. It's my own soul. And if I could find a detailed realm that links to spirituality, then I could find the source of this soul. And within that, I would say, is the most chance that I'll find happiness, or at least to be content, to be one. And then when I'm approaching others, I'll be able to give them happiness. See how that works? Instead of saying I'm going to go to others to find my happiness, because then you're going to find that you need to stop that person, you need to work with that person, you need to go for that person, and then eventually you say, well, what am I doing this for? Is it for me, or is it for my desire that I created, right? But we need the necessities, so you have to form something. It's not saying that we just renounce. So you need your life, you need to have a place to live, and to and also a duty, to give to society. So that's something you have to fight for, if anything. Other than that, these material opulences, that's not really what we're here for. We're humans. We're not immortals. We have short time, And the more that we take from that side, the more we're going to be accustomed to it. And then when it comes time to be spiritual, it's going to be harder for us. So I leave you with that, and I hope you have a good Christmas, and I hope you a healthy and happy New Year. And this is Ujjval. I'll give you one last look at that book. Udav Samanich. Ujjval, Udav, as whatever you like. I had many names. God has many names. That's how we do. Okay? Have a good one.